Most men believe seduction fails because they lack looks, money, or confidence. That's a lie. The real reason they lose is far more brutal. They're playing blind. They don't understand the invisible rules that govern attraction. Seduction is not effort, it's perception. The moment you try to please, impress, or explain yourself, the game is already over. Women don't respond to need, they respond to control, contrast, and emotional precision. In this video, you'll learn the invisible mechanics that decide attraction before a word is spoken. Once you see them, you'll never play the game the same way again.
Point 1. The fatal mistake: confusing attention with desire. She looked at you. She smiled. She replied fast, and you thought, she likes me. That single assumption destroys more attraction than rejection ever could. Most men lose the game of attraction before it even begins, and they never realize why. Not because they said the wrong thing, not because they weren't attractive enough, but because they made one silent psychological error the moment a woman noticed them. They confused attention with desire. This mistake is subtle, deadly, and almost universal. A woman looking at you does not mean she wants you. A woman responding does not mean she's interested. A woman smiling does not mean attraction has begun. It only means one thing: her senses registered your presence. And the average man panics at that moment. He interprets neutral awareness as romantic opportunity. His nervous system fires, his behavior shifts, his energy leaks. Without saying a word, he starts trying to impress, trying to please, trying to secure approval. And the moment he does that, the dynamic collapses. Because attraction does not grow from effort, it grows from contrast. When a man reacts emotionally to a woman's attention, he exposes something dangerous. He reveals that her validation matters more to him than his own internal stability. Women don't analyze this consciously. Their nervous system detects it instantly. Here's the brutal truth most men avoid. The female brain does not reward eagerness, it punishes it. Why? Because eagerness signals emotional dependency. Dependency signals risk, and risk shuts down desire. Evolution wired women to screen for emotional stability long before romance ever enters the picture. A man who rushes to please is unconsciously categorized as fragile. A man who overinvests early is seen as unpredictable under pressure. A man who needs approval is assumed to crumble later. So when you show interest before she's earned it, you flip the hierarchy. You place her above you, and attraction never flows upward. This is why so many men experience the same confusing outcome. They do everything right. They're polite. They listen. They compliment. They show interest. And yet, she fades. She pulls back. She loses enthusiasm. Not because she's cruel, but because his behavior killed the mystery before it was born. Desire requires uncertainty. The female mind becomes engaged when it cannot immediately predict a man's emotional position, when she doesn't know if she has access, when she doesn't know if you impressed her, when she doesn't know if you're affected at all. But the needy man removes that uncertainty instantly. He telegraphs his interest. His body leans in too fast. His words become softer. His reactions become reactive. He starts auditioning, and no woman desires a man who auditions for her approval. This is where most men misunderstand masculinity. Masculinity is not dominance. It's not arrogance. It's not coldness. Masculinity is self-contained emotional gravity. A man who is centered does not rush to define the interaction.
He does not escalate prematurely. He does not chase clarity. He allows space, and space is where attraction breathes. When a woman gives attention and the man does nothing with it, her brain notices something strange. He didn't grab. He didn't chase. He didn't react. That creates friction, and friction creates curiosity. Now she starts wondering, why didn't he lean in? Why didn't he push? Why didn't he try? And the moment she starts asking questions internally, the roles begin to reverse. This is the invisible shift most men never experience, because they panic too early. They think attraction must be secured immediately. They think momentum must be forced. They think silence equals loss. But silence, when grounded, equals power. The man who understands this does something radically different. When he receives attention, he stays neutral. He stays slow. He stays emotionally unavailable, not cold, just unrushed. He doesn't reward attention with validation. He treats it as normal, because to him it is. This sends a message no compliment ever could. I am not impressed easily. I am selective. I do not chase sensations. And this is where attraction begins organically. Because women don't chase men who want them. They chase men who don't need them. The moment you stop trying to convert attention into validation, your presence changes. Your posture relaxes. Your eye contact stabilizes. Your voice slows down. And those microsignals matter more than any line you could memorize. Attraction happens before language. It happens in nervous system exchanges. And the man who controls his internal state controls the outcome. Here is the correction most men must make. Treat female attention as neutral information, not opportunity. Do not reward it. Do not escalate from it. Do not interpret it. Let it exist without reaction. When you do this, you force the interaction onto a higher psychological plane. You are no longer asking, does she like me? You are unconsciously communicating, does she qualify? And qualification flips the power dynamic instantly. She begins investing emotionally to earn your interest. She begins adjusting her behavior. She becomes more expressive, more curious, more engaged. Not because you manipulated her, but because you stopped leaking value. This is the first invisible rule of seduction. Never move emotionally faster than she does. The man who masters this rule stops being desperate, stops being predictable, and stops being forgettable. And once this correction is made, everything else finally starts to work.
Point 2. Overvalidation, the silent killer of attraction. The faster you try to make her feel special, the faster she stops seeing you as special. Most men don't lose women by being rude. They lose them by validating too soon. There is a behavior so common, so socially rewarded, and so deeply destructive to attraction that most men never question it. They think it's kindness. They think it's confidence. They think it's emotional intelligence. In reality, it's the fastest way to destroy desire. That behavior is overvalidation. Overvalidation happens when a man gives emotional rewards before a woman has invested anything to earn them. Compliments too early, reassurance too often, agreement too quickly, interest too clearly. And the moment you do this, something subtle but irreversible happens in her mind. You collapse the hierarchy. You move yourself below her psychologically. Women do not feel desire for men who emotionally place themselves beneath them, not because women want dominance, but because attraction requires polarity. Polarity requires tension. Tension requires uncertainty.
Point 3. Controlled ambiguity. Why mystery creates desire.
The moment she fully understands you, attraction begins to die. Desire doesn't live in clarity. It lives in controlled uncertainty. Most men believe clarity builds trust, and trust builds attraction. So they explain themselves. They clarify intentions. They reveal emotions early. They expose their entire personality like a resume, and then they wonder why interest fades. The truth is uncomfortable. Clarity creates safety, but mystery creates desire. Female attraction does not ignite when she fully understands you. It ignites when she can't quite read you. This is what we call controlled ambiguity. Not manipulation, not games, not disappearing acts, but the deliberate refusal to overexpose your emotional script. The average man thinks attraction is about being understood. The high-value man understands that attraction is about being felt before being understood. When you reveal everything too quickly, her imagination shuts down, and imagination is where desire grows. Psychology confirms this. Harvard research on romantic attraction shows that moderate unpredictability increases emotional engagement, not chaos, not inconsistency, but variability. When a woman cannot fully predict your emotional rhythm, her brain stays alert. When her brain stays alert, curiosity stays alive, and curiosity is the first true stage of desire. Here is where most men fail. They confuse honesty with emotional dumping. They confuse openness with over-disclosure. They confuse confidence with transparency. Confidence does not mean explaining everything. Confidence means being comfortable leaving space. A man who explains himself too much signals insecurity, because explanation is usually a defense mechanism. When you justify who you are, what you want, or why you behave a certain way, you're unconsciously saying, "I'm afraid you'll misjudge me," and fear is always detected. The female subconscious reads microsignals instantly: tone shifts, speech acceleration, excess detail, nervous clarification. These are not words, they're emotional leaks, and emotional leaks destroy mystery. Controlled ambiguity works because it shifts the power dynamic. When you answer briefly instead of fully, when you pause instead of rushing to respond, when you let silence exist without filling it, her mind starts doing the work. She begins to interpret. She begins to project. She begins to wonder. And projection is where emotional attachment forms. This is not theory. It is neurological. The brain hates incomplete patterns. It seeks closure. When you leave emotional gaps, her mind tries to fill them. She thinks about you later. She replays the interaction. She searches for meaning. And by the time she realizes it, she's already invested. This is why the man who talks less often feels more impactful than the man who talks constantly. Impact is not created by volume. It is created by precision. Consider this difference. A man who says, "I really like you. I've been thinking about you all day. I feel a strong connection. I hope you feel the same," versus a man who says, "You're interesting. Pause. I noticed something about you." The second man creates tension. The first man releases it. Attraction does not grow in emotional release. It grows in emotional buildup. This also explains why women test men. Silence, delays, contradictions, subtle challenges. These are not rejections, they're probes. She is asking one silent question. Does this man collapse when I disrupt emotional certainty? If you rush to explain, you fail the test. If you chase reassurance, you fail the test. If you become reactive, you fail the test. But when you remain calm, grounded, and slightly unreadable, something powerful happens. She feels safe and intrigued. Safety alone creates friendship. Intrigue alone creates instability. But safety combined with mystery creates desire. Controlled ambiguity also applies to availability. Being available is not weakness. Being predictably available is. When she knows you will always respond instantly, always adjust your schedule, always prioritize her attention, your value drops. Not because you're kind, but because scarcity disappears. A man whose time has structure communicates value without speaking. A man who does not rush communicates self-control. Self-control is one of the strongest masculine signals. This does not mean ignoring her. It means responding from choice, not urgency. You're present, but not desperate. Interested, but not consumed. Engaged, but not surrendered. That balance creates emotional gravity, and gravity pulls. This is why the most attractive men often feel hard to read, not cold, not distant, but contained. Their emotions exist, they're just not leaking everywhere. Their interest is real, it's just not flooding the interaction. They allow things to unfold instead of forcing outcomes. Controlled ambiguity is mastery over pace. You don't rush the moment. You let tension breathe. You don't answer everything. You answer enough. You don't reveal everything. You reveal layers. And with each layer, her curiosity deepens. Because desire is not about knowing everything. Desire is about wanting to know more. When you master controlled ambiguity, you stop chasing connection. You create an emotional vacuum that pulls others towards you. She doesn't feel manipulated. She feels intrigued. She doesn't feel pressured. She feels curious. She doesn't feel controlled. She feels drawn. This is the difference between men who exhaust themselves trying to be chosen and men who quietly become unforgettable. And once a woman starts trying to understand you, the game has already shifted in your favor.
Point 4. Emotional regulation, the signal women trust instinctively. The fastest way to lose attraction is not saying the wrong thing. It's reacting emotionally when pressure appears. Women don't chase intensity, they chase emotional control. There is a trait women screen for faster than looks, status, or charm. Most men never realize they are being tested for it. That trait is emotional regulation, not suppression, not coldness, not detachment, but the ability to remain internally steady when uncertainty, pressure, silence, or provocation appears. Women do not fall for men who feel everything loudly. They fall for men who contain emotion without denying it, because emotional regulation signals one thing above all else: stability. And stability equals safety at the biological level. Here's the brutal truth. The female nervous system is constantly scanning for emotional volatility. Not consciously, instinctively. She is asking, will this man create chaos when things get intense? Will he collapse when emotions rise? Will I have to manage him? The moment the answer is yes, attraction shuts down. This is why men who feel deeply but lack control struggle so much. They mistake emotional transparency for connection, but transparency without regulation feels unsafe. Neuroscience confirms this. Studies from Stanford and Michigan show that women experience higher dopamine and oxytocin responses when interacting with men who demonstrate calm emotional consistency, especially under ambiguity or mild stress. Not excitement, not drama, consistency. The regulated man creates a stable emotional container, and that container allows desire to form without fear. Now, let's expose where most men fail. They react. They react to delayed replies. They react to mixed signals. They react to teasing. They react to silence. Each reaction leaks emotional dependence, and emotional dependence
kills polarity. When a woman senses that your emotional state is influenced by her behavior, she gains unconscious power over you, and desire cannot coexist with imbalance. Here's the paradox. The more emotionally affected you appear by her actions, the less emotionally affected she becomes by you. Regulation reverses this dynamic. When you remain steady regardless of her fluctuations, she starts adjusting to you. This is called emotional anchoring. Your calm becomes the reference point. She may tease, she may test, she may withdraw slightly. And when none of it destabilizes you, something clicks in her mind. He's solid. Not boring, not indifferent, solid. Solid men are rare, and rarity triggers value. Let's talk about tests, because they are inevitable. Women test not to reject you, but to evaluate you. Silence tests your anxiety. Disagreement tests your ego. Teasing tests your self-worth. Boundaries test your strength. These are not conscious strategies. They are instinctive filters. If you explain yourself, you fail. If you defend yourself emotionally, you fail. If you escalate intensity, you fail. But when you respond with calm humor, grounded presence, or relaxed indifference, you pass. Example: she says something challenging. You pause. You smile lightly. You respond slowly. Not dismissive, not reactive, just steady. That steadiness communicates more than any clever line ever could, because it tells her this man governs himself. Governance is attractive. Now, let's address a dangerous misunderstanding. Emotional regulation is not emotional absence. It is emotional mastery. You still feel, you still care, you just don't leak need. There is a difference between intensity and depth. Intensity is chaotic. Depth is controlled. Women bond with depth. This is why men who try hard often fail. Effort leaks anxiety. Anxiety signals instability. But the man who regulates his internal state appears effortless, and effortlessness reads as power. Your voice slows, your posture stabilizes, your reactions reduce, and suddenly you feel different. Not because you changed your personality, but because you stopped outsourcing emotional control. Regulated men do not chase emotional reassurance. They don't need constant feedback. They don't need validation to remain centered. This creates something powerful. Her emotional system relaxes around you. She feels safe to feel, safe to open, safe to desire, because she senses that you won't collapse if emotions intensify. And here is the final shift. When you regulate yourself consistently, you stop being reactive and start being directive. Not controlling her, controlling the atmosphere. Your calm sets the tone. Your pace defines the rhythm. Your stillness commands space. And when a man controls the emotional tempo, he controls attraction. This is why emotional regulation is the gateway trait. It turns mystery into trust. It turns tension into desire. It turns presence into gravity. Without it, nothing else matters. With it, everything amplifies.
Point 5. Strategic ambiguity. Why mystery creates desire faster than effort. The moment she fully understands you, attraction starts to decay, not because she's bored, but because certainty kills curiosity. There is a silent rule of attraction most men violate without realizing it. They reveal too much, too fast. They explain their intentions. They clarify their feelings. They expose their emotional map before she ever asks. And the moment they do, desire begins to weaken, not because honesty is bad, but because timing is everything. Attraction does not grow in clarity. It grows in controlled uncertainty. This is what strategic ambiguity means. not lying, not manipulation, not playing games, but allowing space for interpretation. The female mind is deeply responsive to incomplete patterns. Psychologists call this the Zeigarnik effect, the brain's tendency to fixate on what is unfinished, unresolved, or partially hidden. When a woman cannot fully categorize you, her mind keeps returning to you, not consciously, instinctively, and this mental return is the foundation of desire. Here's where most men fail. They believe attraction is built by being understood. So they explain who they are. They explain what they want. They explain why she likes her. But explanation removes tension, and tension is the fuel of attraction. When everything is revealed, nothing remains to explore. Strategic ambiguity preserves emotional depth. It allows her imagination to work in your favor, and imagination is far more powerful than information. Think about this carefully. Women rarely fall for what they know about a man. They fall for what they sense but can't fully define. That undefined space becomes emotional gravity. Now, let's clarify what ambiguity is not. It is not silence without presence. It is not emotional coldness. It is not avoidance. It is selective disclosure. You speak, but you don't overshare. You engage, but you don't unload. You show interest, but you don't confess urgency. This creates layered depth. You become someone she discovers gradually, not instantly, and discovery is addictive. Here's the biological reason this works. The female brain releases dopamine during anticipation, not fulfillment. When everything is known, anticipation collapses. When some elements remain undefined, dopamine continues to fire. That's why uncertainty feels exciting. Not chaotic uncertainty, structured uncertainty. A calm man with mystery feels powerful. An anxious man with mystery feels unstable. The difference is emotional regulation, which you already mastered. Now ambiguity amplifies it. Let's talk about conversational behavior. Most men answer questions like job interviews. They give full explanations. They justify choices. They expose backstory. The ambiguous man answers precisely, not completely. Enough to be interesting, not enough to be finished. This causes her to lean in emotionally, not because she's confused, but because she's curious. Curiosity is attraction's doorway. The same applies to emotional expression. When you like her, you don't rush to declare it. You show it through consistency, presence, tone. Words come later, because verbal confirmation collapses polarity if delivered too early. Here's a critical truth. The man who reveals everything early signals that he has nothing to lose, and a man with nothing to lose has nothing to chase. Ambiguity signals self-sufficiency. It says, I enjoy connection, but I don't need it to exist. That signal is deeply attractive. Now let's address the fear many men have. What if she thinks I'm not interested? This fear exposes the real issue, dependence on outcome. A regulated man trusts the process. He understands that attraction unfolds when space is respected. If she's interested, curiosity pulls her forward. If she's not, no amount of explanation would save it anyway. Strategic ambiguity filters weak connections early. It saves your energy, and it amplifies desire where it already exists. This is why women often chase men who feel emotionally unavailable, not because they want distance, but because ambiguity activates pursuit. However, there is a crucial balance. Too much ambiguity becomes detachment. Too little becomes predictability. The sweet spot is warm mystery. You are present, you are attentive, you are grounded, but you are not fully decoded. Your emotional core remains intact. This creates polarity, and polarity creates attraction. Now let's talk about control of narrative. When you explain yourself, you hand her the script. When you allow interpretation, she writes part of the story herself. And people value what they help create. Her investment increases, not because you convinced her, but because she participated mentally. That participation builds attachment. Here's the final layer. Strategic ambiguity protects your power even after attraction forms. When a woman knows everything about you, she stops imagining. When imagination stops, desire plateaus. The man who retains depth remains interesting long-term, not because he hides, but because he evolves. He doesn't freeze his identity to be understood. He allows discovery to unfold naturally. This is why strategic ambiguity is not a trick, it's a lifestyle posture. You don't rush to be known, you allow yourself to be experienced. And experience creates desire that explanation never could.
Closing. Attraction was never about chasing, convincing, or proving your worth. It was always about who you are when you're not trying. When you master your presence, control your energy, and respect your own value, you stop playing the game everyone else is losing. Women don't chase effort. They chase certainty, depth, and mystery. Become the man who sees the rules instead of begging for results. From that moment on, attraction stops being random and starts becoming inevitable.